Right, so if anyone doesn't know who I am, I've been involved in reversing and researching the Windows boot chains for 10 years now. I've also had interest in NT on non-x86 architectures, and I've been bringing up NT on systems it was never supposed to run on. And I've also been doing a little bit of experimentation with custom NT userland, because I don't like Windows 11's user interface, but the kernel is perfectly fine. So, when Windows 8 came out, it came with obviously EFI Secure Boot, and people hate it. Part of that is because Microsoft controls the signing infrastructure. Had it been someone else, things might have been different, and also, Windows 8 also came with a port to ARMv7 that it flopped, and Microsoft decided to lock it down because they wanted to compete with the iPad. Even the internal developers hated that decision. I think no one actually liked that decision. I think they saw 30% App Store and no one used it. And that ARMv7 port being locked down is the only reason I started researching Windows bootloaders in the first place. So there are other lockdown Windows devices, Windows phones, the Surface Hub, the HoloLens series. I don't have many. The only one, and of course the Xbox One, which is the most secure out of all of those. It's the Xbox One and Xbox series is proof that Microsoft can write secure code. I don't have a Surface Hub, maybe I'll get one someday. I don't have a HoloLens, maybe I'll get one someday. And I was involved a bit in Windows Phone stuff, but anyway, the Windows 365 link. It was announced in 2024 and described as secure by design. It's something that was defined as Secure Boot, TPM, HVCI, BitLocker, all enabled and cannot be turned off. And I see that and I'm like, well, I don't think so. So before it released, there was some initial stuff I did. There was some references in Windows to an edition called WNC, but no one could figure out if it was on the update servers or not. But a previous iteration, WCOS, used some different parameter in the update server, so I decided to pass that, and it worked and gave me an update. And so this is what I got when I booted it up in a VM, a placeholder license agreement. I don't think they ever changed that. And the base build is also broken. Like, it shows up nothing when it's installed. You can shift F10 to a command prompt. There's no shell 32. There's a bunch of stuff missing. But I did figure out how to update it. When the update finished, that brought in all the security stuff. The BitLocker got enabled with TPM only, no recovery key. That changed later. And I decided to try something out because there's obviously the no integrity checks in the Windows bootloader, so I booted with that, and I got this. Device unlocked for testing purposes only. And oh yeah, no, it only wants Wi-Fi, and my VM only had Ethernet, so I couldn't get past this screen. Anyway, there was also a Control plus Shift plus F10 to give you an admin command line, but the update disabled that. In the base build, it used hard-coded credentials. They changed that to randomly generate credentials afterwards, and only in the unlocked mode, so they locked that down. So they announced they were releasing the device in April 2025, so when it showed up in a UK corporate IT suppliers website, I ordered one. After some delays, it eventually arrived, and it's a Microsoft black box. It's here. If I can get the camera up, then should I just unplug the? Okay. Okay. So here's the front, and here's the back. It's got when it's on a desk, it's supposed to be like this side where you've got a single USB port, and on the back you've got some more USB, HDMI, Ethernet power in, and a small pinhole button just below the power, and that's used to get into the EFI firmware. So I used that. It was documented as being used to enter the EFI setup, so I used it, and secure boot options were present, but with only the single Microsoft-only option. But I could boot from USB, and it turned out that booting to WinPE specifically disabled user mode code integrity, because something they specifically added for this for some reason. So I just booted to WinPE and dumped the internal storage. And I checked the dump out, and it turns out there was an NTFS partition right at the end. And also, they'd updated it at some point. There was no BitLocker until OOB actually finished, so it could escrow the recovery key to wherever. The NTFS partition at the end contained a bunch of factory tools, the actual operating system image, and an interesting build of WinPE. I've since uploaded that dump to the Internet Archive. So, the next thing I tried was, well, there's a nice little trick that I've known about for some time. It's been helpful with some BitLocker key dumping vulnerabilities, but if you choose to disable integrity checks from the advanced options menu, there's a code path in WinLoad where it will load a file called mcupdate.dll for processor microcode updates, and it will get executed before exit boot services. And if you disable integrity checks, it will disable signature checks for that too. And at some point, they added code to remove that option if the CI policy for this device is actually loaded. But you can just downgrade WinLoad, and that's enough for running full Windows. You just delete the variables that lock the policy in place, zero out the first few sectors of the internal storage, so the Windows bootloader doesn't just load it back in again and boot from whatever install media. I just haven't actually written the code for that yet, because. So, what about Linux? Matthew Garrett said on Fedi that you can just apply the new third-party certificate DB update that's signed by the old KEC, key exchange key. I knew that update existed, but that post basically got me to look into Mu, which is Microsoft's open source secure UEFI firmware, because I was thinking, surely not, surely they did something, but nope, the Microsoft only, Microsoft plus third-party option just changes what's in DB. Everything else is the same. It doesn't check whether you're applying it doesn't check what you're applying DB updates for. So I booted to WinPE and applied the update, and it worked. But I had to wait for someone to release a shim signed by the new third-party certificate. Eventually, Fedora released such an updated shim, and any distro with an updated shim should just work. And so here's a screenshot of Linux running on the thing, and I'll actually boot it up now. If this thing can reach. Can you switch to the The hardware really isn't that spectacular. It's like low end, but I'm expecting that given time, there's going to be a lot of these things getting decommissioned. So just as you can see, the specs aren't great, but it's supposed to not be running this, so So, what about the future? The vulnerability described can be fixed, or mitigated in some ways, like the whole key exchange key thing can be fixed with a new EFI update. The advanced options no integrity checks thing can be mitigated with bootloader updates, because that's the second stage bootloader, so the first stage bootloader didn't check for stuff like that. There are other vulnerabilities that could be used. Also, there's theoretical hardware attacks like just dumping the flash and changing the variables directly and writing the change dump back. But I don't understand why Secure Boot is locked on this device at all, because BitLocker is forced on. Any attacker who can get the BitLocker keys also can bypass or disable Secure Boot. So, and obviously if you want to install some other operating system, you don't really care about the contents of the device anyway. That's it, because it's apparently quick, but I'll be at the Q&A tent later.